Today's Obon message will be given by Reverend Jigaku Takenouchi of Hilo Taishoji Soto Mission. Reverend Jigaku Takenouchi is the 16th President Minister of Taishoji. He is a disciple of Reverend Shinsho Hata, the previous minister of Taishoji, who provided his training here in Hawaii. He began training first as a lay assistant and later a deacon, before taking on the challenge of Hosenshiki or Dharma battle and becoming a Hawaii Soto Mission minister. He was raised in the Catholic faith, but his interest in religions led him to explore different faiths such as Wicca, Judaism, and Yoruba, to name a few. It was through Dr. J. Sakashita, one of his religion professors, that he was exposed to Buddhism, and later through Reverend Hata that he realized his calling. Will you please welcome Reverend Jigaku?
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your Hatsubon and Obon service today. Brent and I are always joyful for our time that we get to spend here at Takenouchi, and we always look to the warmness of your Sangha, always welcoming us when we attend your services and our joint events. Every year in January, we hold a joint event together, and it's a great time for us to deepen our meditative practice. And what a joyful place then to do that than here in Kona Takenouchi with all members of this temple. So recently I was in Waipahu last night, and I was there for Obon service as well. But shortly before going to Waipahu, I was called by previous minister, Reverend Roy Kokuzo. He used to be minister at Waipahu, and we were talking on the phone for a little bit, and during our conversation, it kind of finally clicked that we shared a unique connection. When I first started attending UH on Oahu, it was Professor J. Sakashita who asked me to go to various temples and places of worship. And it was at Waipahu's Taioji Temple where I met Reverend Kokuzo for the very first time and got to sit Sazen in a Soto Zen temple for the very first time. I think that this is a unique and interesting connection for us because Reverend Kokuzo was raised in Hilo, and his father, Zenki, was the minister at Taishoji for many years. I thought it was unique that I would end up being a minister at my first temple, being where my first exposure to Buddhist practice through Reverend Kokuzo, where he was born and raised. So I ended up where he started. So that's kind of just goes to show how our sanghas are all connected through unique and different ways. So today I want to address all Hatsubon families, and I want to offer you my deepest condolences on your loss. May the Buddhist light of all-inclusive wisdom and compassion give you comfort in this time. Amidst the challenges that we face throughout the year, the joy of gathering for Obon is a joyful remembrance, a beacon of light for our lives. In this festival, we come together as a Sangha, a spiritual community, and we come and we honor, celebrate the lives of everyone who has passed on. We share in this experience of remembrance, and we find solace and comfort in our neighbors. We create and we strengthen our bonds. We deepen our love and our compassion. Obon invites us to rediscover the priceless treasures, the memories of our loved ones. We remember their stories, their laughter, their wisdom, and their love. We celebrate their journey and the impact that they had in our lives. We honor them every day by being present in this moment. But Obon is a little bit more than that as well. It is a time where we gather our communities, we partake in fellowship and fun, we enjoy delicious foods. During Bon Dance, our temples welcome Buddhists and non-Buddhists alike. Our friends and neighbors share in the festivities of the season. They deepen their understanding of our beautiful traditions and celebrations. When we gather around the Yagura, we dance, we can feel our connection to our departed loved ones. Obon truly is a celebration of all life. It is also a continued relationship with those who have come before us, those who made our very existence possible through the various conditions of their own lives. It is with a sense of gratitude and responsibility to create a meaningful future for the coming generations that we observe this beautiful service. We honor our ancestors and our loved ones by being here together in fellowship, encompassed by the embrace of the Buddha's compassion for all beings. The act of dancing itself is a remembrance, but more importantly, is an expression of our gratitude for all lives. When our loved ones pass away, they continue to be a part of us. They become a personal Buddha for us who watches over us and guides us. As mentioned earlier, Obon has its origins in the Ulambala Sutra, a shortened form of Urabon-e, or to hang upside down. That story does teach us about Mokuren, or Moggallana, and he was one of the Buddha's 10 great disciples. He believed that the suffering of his mother was because of her unconditional love for him. Through studying the sutra, we learned that his mother would do nothing short of murder for her son. Some people would see her as being greedy or selfish for only caring for the needs of her son. We understand, however, that this love was not only for her son, but for all beings. She was living by an example of a mother's love. Moggallana was so hurt that he knew his mother was suffering and that he felt that he was the cause of that suffering. So he did go to the Buddha for guidance. The Buddha did tell him to make offerings to his Sangha. He also told him to reflect and meditate. Let him explore the true reason of his mother's suffering. Moggallana did what the Buddha had told him to do. He did offer to the Sangha. He generously gave. He also meditated and reflected on the reason why his mother's condition was the way that it was. Through his actions, he was able to realize that his mother's actions were indeed not selfish, but that they were selfless, always for others, even if indirectly. He also made the offerings to the Sangha, and through the sutras we learned that these humble offerings have power to them and are able to nourish and feed all beings who are suffering. Through these actions, his mother was able to be liberated, and he was able to rejoice in gratitude. This is perhaps the origin of why Obon is a celebration and not a solemn occasion. This is perhaps why we dance around the Yagura in fellowship and friendship. But the pain of losing someone is a natural part of our lives. How we learn to understand the meaning of death comes from the telling of the stories. Our memories are stories. We preserve them in our hearts. They continue to guide us, inspire us, and support us through all the challenges that we may face. The grief that we experience from losing someone is not a single instant. It is not a precise, singular moment that we experience, but rather it is a constant companion, a lifelong friend that will continue on this journey of this life. Grief is a natural part of love. When we grieve over a loved one. and that love is transformed into a spiritual love. It is grief that turns our sorrows into appreciation. As you reflect on your loved ones during this time of Obon, take time to reflect on your life and your relationship with them. How did they influence you? What parts of them remain with you? Part of Buddhism is understanding death as a natural component of our existence, and we should not fear it. Shakyamuni Buddha taught us that all things are impermanent. Even he had to go through this change of death. But he was wise and left his teachings for us so that we too could understand and accept this experience and be free from the suffering that we might attach to it. I think it is also important that we understand our rituals and our traditions. A ritual itself is a sequence of actions that involve gestures, words, and objects. Traditions are the customs and beliefs that are passed down from generation to generation. The stories and traditions of our ancestors shape our rituals. There is a unique singular power in the rituals that we perform. When we perform our rituals, we're consciously moving with intention and purpose. We bow our heads in gratitude when we approach the oshoko table. We sprinkle incense or offer a flower. We light candles and we make offerings from our heart. Some cultures may refer to these actions, these ritual actions, as magic. But there is power behind these. As Soto Buddhists, we offer the merit of our actions for the benefit of others. When we stand in front of the Butsudan and put our hands together in Gasho, that is a ritual. When we recite the sacred scriptures full of profound knowledge, we seek to understand and connect with them in a deeper way. That too is a ritual. Through these purposeful actions, we are in a way tapping into and connecting, receiving the shared experiences of our ancestors in a whole new way. Now, many of you have probably heard me talk before, and I often speak of my grandparents. They were kind, caring, and selfless people. By no means they were perfect, but they were always busy helping others. My childhood memories, the ones that I can most easily recall in my life, are always the ones that I spent with my abuelita and my abuelito. Every summer as a child, I would spend the summers with them. My grandfather grew sugarcane, and he spent his days in the fields. But no matter how tired he was on his days off or in the evenings, he would cut his neighbors' lawns and he would trim the branches on their trees. If he had time, and usually on Sundays he would, then that would be the time when he would go and hang out with his neighbors across the street or in someone's lanai. Those were the times that I cherished with my grandfather. I would run the coffee over from my abuelita. She would make a pot for all the guys playing dominoes, and I would get to run the coffee over to them, and I would sit and watch them play. If I was really good, I would also get to drink a little sip of coffee. So I have to thank my grandfather for my coffee addiction in this life. So not the healthiest, but yeah, I started maybe 7, 8 years old, so never too young. My grandmother, I remember even more fondly. She was always busy. She was a seamstress. When she wasn't busy sewing garments at home or hemming someone's skirt, she was always at the church. Church was a big part of my grandparents' life. She would volunteer her time there, and no matter what she was given, she always joyfully took on the task that she was taken or given to. But one thing that I remember, and one thing that I really value from my connection with my grandmother, is that no matter what she was doing on that day, she would always make sure to come home for lunch, and she would always have a hot meal prepared for us, making sure that whatever we ate was healthy and not something that came out of a can. That is a great treasure in itself, as most days during the school year, I would often just have like a can of Chef Boyardee or something like that, but nothing can beat a home-cooked meal of rice and beans. So these are the memories that I can recall most easily, the ones that I can see most vividly. The reason that I wanted to talk a little bit about my grandparents, and often do, is because of the influence they have in our lives. In many cases, our grandparents are our first sources to our traditions. We learn some from our parents, but if we observe our parents close enough, we know that they too are still learning from their parents. They're still watching for examples with us. By being mindful of that, we can appreciate our grandparents and try what they're trying to teach us through their actions. In my household, every morning after Zazen, I light a candle and I burn incense. And I do this for them. I take a moment out of my day, every day, to honor my grandparents in this way. That is my tradition. When I light the candle, that is my connection to the tradition of my grandparents. Often my grandmother would go to church early in the morning and light a candle for her deceased parents. When I light incense, that is my tradition. In this way, I can honor both the traditions of my ancestors and the ones that I have incorporated on my own. At the temple, we also light candles. By being mindful of one's actions, we can combine traditions in this way. We can honor our ancestors regardless. In today's day and age, it is very common for our households to be mixed, meaning we have different cultural backgrounds and religious backgrounds incorporated into one household. So I think it is important to realize that we may not just be following one single tradition, but we do not have to choose and pick between them. We can choose to honor our ancestors in different ways by combining the rituals that make sense, by combining the traditions that overlap. These are the rituals that will matter for us in future generations. A few months ago, my father passed away. The last time that I saw him was actually at my grandmother's funeral. And we had an odd relationship. We were, I guess some people would describe us as stoic. We didn't speak very much. But I still have some memories of him. What I didn't know about my father, I learned after his passing. My sister had mailed me a letter from one of his neighbors. It turns out that my father had moved into my grandparents' house. The neighborhood hadn't changed very much. My father would still cut the lawns of the neighbors. He would also take the ladies into town and he would help them with their errands. Now, in that particular neighborhood, and this is in Puerto Rico, there isn't a bus transit system. There is a van, kind of privately owned, and if there's space in the van, then they'll take you to the center of town, and then you have to make your way from that area. So it's not like a taxi service where you can just ask to go where you want to go. And being older, most of these people did not have access to Uber or Lyfts, so they relied on these modes of transportation, and they would often fill up quickly as people come from far in the country to the center of town to run their errands. So I thought that my father was following the traditions of his parents, my grandparents. He was still doing the tasks that my grandfather would undertake. He was still doing what my grandmother would have done. I actually didn't know this about him because I did not see my father cook a meal ever on the stove. Anything that he ever prepared for us was always outside on the hibachi, and usually was meat. So I thought that it was interesting that he actually ended up attending the church that my grandmother used to go to, a small building, far fewer members, but he still volunteered there. His neighbor Jeannie, the lady who sent the letter, she remembered me as playing in her lanai as our grandparents would play dominoes. I actually don't remember her, so sorry, Jeannie. But I thought it was wonderful that someone was able to share these stories with me, to let me see a side of my father that I didn't know. And I think that this is an interesting and beautiful experience to have. It is sad as well, of course. I wish I would have known this from my father firsthand. But my grandparents' actions left a lasting impression on him. Even after their passing, he returned to his childhood home. He lived where they lived and did what they did. Now, I live in Hawaii, and I have my own traditions. I'd like to think that I also carry the traditions of my grandparents and my parent. His kindness and generosity touched the lives of many people. My father continued and will continue to inspire me now. This Obon, as we come together to honor our loved ones, let us also remember the importance of our Sangha, our community, and our connections. Let us reach out to our neighbors and offer helping hands. Let us build relationships that nourish our souls. The Dalai Lama said, if you want to be happy, practice compassion. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. We, the living, are the bridge between the past and the future. We carry the stories and the wisdom, the love of all those who came before us. And we have a responsibility to pass these things on to future generations. By honoring our ancestors and cherishing their memories, we ensure that their legacy lives on. We take a personal hand in shaping the world around us for the benefit of all. In essence, we have become custodians of the collective history of our ancestors, preserving it for future generations. So as we continue our daily lives, let us remember the importance of impermanence, but also let us remember gratitude, interconnectedness, and compassion. Cherish this particular moment in your life. Embrace each change that you experience. Live your life with wisdom and kindness. In this way, we can truly honor the legacy that has been given to us. We can create a brighter future. We can live in the Buddha's teachings for the benefit of all. May you all find peace and solace in these teachings, and may the light and wisdom and compassion of the Buddha guide you on your own journeys. I want to thank all of you today for inviting me. As I mentioned earlier, it is truly a precious time for me to join your Sangha, to be a part of your community, even if it's just for one day today or a second day tomorrow. Today is all that matters. Today is all that counts. And I am happy that today I get to spend with you. Thank you very much.